Hi everyone, quickly diving into portrait photography. Now, I'm not going to go too deep into this section because portraits aren't really the mainstay of my photography business, but everyone does love to shoot portraits now and then, whether it's friends or family or just on holidays. And I think it's really important just to know a few key tips, and I can teach you some of those and how I like to shoot portraits. There are various ways of capturing portrait photography, but for me, I have a very particular method, and I'll talk you through that now. So first things first, I would always shoot in manual mode when you're shooting portraits. You do want to always try and shoot above 1/250th of a second. This is because you're going to have camera shake if you're shooting handheld with your hands, but also mainly to capture motion in your subject. Sometimes your person, your model is going to be doing some posing or just moving around or smiling, or if it's at an event, they might be laughing and there's going to be motion in their bodies. In order to best capture this, you're just going to need to make sure you're above 1/250th of a second to freeze that motion, to get a sharp image. So that you have enough light to capture this, you're going to need a prime lens, ideally with a wide aperture. That's a lens that's going to stop down to all the way maybe 1.4. This lens, which I love to use, is the 50-1.2, and it goes all the way down to that 1.2 aperture, which is great for allowing as much light in as possible. We're going to get really sharp images because it's a prime lens. Prime lenses are notoriously sharper than zoom lenses because there's not so many moving parts and it's just fixed glass. So sharpness, you can have a lot of light in, low noise, low ISO, and also it's going to be nice and easy to hold. It's going to be a bit easier to move around with. And also, one last point is that a prime lens means you can use your body, use your feet to find a new composition. Instead of just standing still and zooming in and out with a zoom lens, you can find new compositions easier. You're in that mindset when you're using a prime lens to capture unique compositions. I would also say that shooting prime lenses, you actually get better skin tones. Now, the colors that come out of high-end primes really are a lot nicer than the zoom lenses counterparts, and the prime lenses are often just built to a higher standard. So a good starting lens could be a 50mm 1.8, and these are really sharp lenses from all Sony, Nikon and Canon. And again, 50-1.4, 35-1.4 or 1.8. And if you really want dreamy, sort of high compression portraits, you could shoot with an 85 or 100mm, 105mm from Sony, I believe. So there's various different lenses. You can get that sort of environmental portrait with a wider, sort of like a 35 lens, or you could get a more compressed deep shot with a 85 or 105. So it really depends on how you want to shoot portraiture. I typically go for a 35mm or a 50mm prime, and these allow you to just capture a bit more of the environment around your subject. You can get quite close in a 35. Say you're in like a coffee shop or something, and you want to shoot your model or your friend or your partner in their position. If you're at an 85mm, you're never going to have the space to capture this. But if you're on a 35mm prime, you can get really reasonably close in and capture the whole scene. So as I mentioned, I love to shoot my portraits wide open. That means the lens is fully open, as much light as possible. What this allows us to get is this really creamy background, this bokeh filled background that's going to separate your subject from the background and foreground, and it allows you to get a nice depth in the shot, which we love for portraits. You want all the focus on that beautiful subject that we have. We also want to make sure when we're shooting in low light to always be in that low aperture, because it allows all the light to come in and we're not going to end up with noisy low light photos. One point to note though, when you're shooting at a wide aperture, is you get a very sharp, a very fine focus plane, which means only a little bit of your image is going to be in focus, and usually that wants to be the eye of the subject. But often if a model is standing like this, and you're focused on this eye is not going to be in focus. So if that's the case and your model is slightly turned, you may need to stop down to f2 or f2.8 to make sure you get the whole face in focus, because you don't really want just one eye in focus there. You also want to try using eye autofocus to sort of always have that point tracking the eye. It's going to be really important because you can then focus all your attention on the composition and directing the model, and you don't have to really worry about where your focus point is. If your camera doesn't support eye autofocus, then what you can do is use the joystick and use the single point focus mode and sort of follow your subject around using the joystick. And that's really useful. Always either track the face or the eye, the closest eye, and make sure that is sharp, because that's the point where everyone's focus looks straight to when they're looking at the image for the first time. In terms of your composition and environment, I would recommend trying both backlit and frontlit portraits. So that's when the sun's sort of glowing behind at sunset and really glows, gives the kind of model a halo. You can also try frontlit. So when the sun's going down, you might not have enough light to really get the face exposed properly. So try the light coming from the side and it's kind of glowing. You can also try and use your environment to enhance the portrait, whether this is like lighting in an evening setting or even sort of foliage. You can use that to sort of blur out the foreground or the background, and make sure you have a nice backdrop that's going to create that creamy palette, and your subject sitting or standing a little spaced out from your background gives you that depth, which is really important. It's also really important that your person in the photograph, the model or your friend, is comfortable and relaxed. It's going to make a much nicer image. If you have music on or you're just sort of laughing and joking, they're going to be a lot more free and relaxed, and their posing is just going to look a lot better. So try and make a nice rapport with your model, your person you're photographing, and this will allow you to just capture genuine images that will really enhance your photography.